Salve, salve, Nerd Birds! E aí, fã de NFL? E aí, torcedor da Falcons? Sejam bem-vindos a mais um Falcons Play Action, episódio muito especial, mais uma vez com um convidado para comentar um pouquinho aí sobre essa classe de draft. E comigo hoje aqui, o Roman, que cobre o Washington Huskies, Universidade dos Prospectos do Michael Penix e do Bralen Trice. Então, ele vai estar um pouquinho aqui comigo hoje para falar sobre esses prospectos. Então, welcome, Roman. Thank you, man. Thank you for accepting the invite. And let's talk a little bit about football. But first, please share your social networks. Tell us a little bit what you do covering the Huskies and so on.
Victor, first of all, thanks for having me. This is really, really great to be here. I'm super excited to do this. So yeah, I cover the Washington Huskies. I'm the co-host of the Locked On Huskies podcast. And then I also cover the Huskies as the site editor for Huskies Wire, which is part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. So, you know, we do a lot of writing over there. And then we do a lot of podcasting every single day. We like to update the channel with everything that's going on. We cover the NFL draft. We cover the transfer portal, everything that's going on in the world of college football. Super fun, a whole lot of stuff. And yeah, you guys got a couple of really fantastic players in Michael Penix and Bralen Trice, two of my favorite players that I've gotten to cover over my time just working with UW.
Yeah. So let's start with the day one pick. So Michael Penix Jr. at 8 overall for the Falcons, the most shocking pick of the day one and possibly the entire draft. No one was expecting that. A lot of controversy on that pick, a lot of heat that Fontenot and Raheem Morris are taking for this selection. But let's talk about the positives. What are the Falcons getting on Michael Penix? I know he's a very experienced guy with 6 years of college football, suffered a couple of concerning injuries, but I know he was also the team captain for the offense. So overall, like, what can we expect for the Michael Penix as a person, as a player? How can he contribute to the Falcons? Even though he is going to be the future of the Falcons, what can we expect from him?
So for Michael Penix, the first and foremost thing that you're getting is a wonderful human being and leader. He is just a really just tough guy where, you know, he wrote a whole thing in the Players Tribune right before he got drafted talking about, yeah, I know I've had these injuries, but it's nothing that set me back. And, you know, I'd be more concerned if I didn't, because he talked about his heart and just what kind of player he is. And that's something that we saw every single day getting a chance to cover him, where he's just a really determined guy. He never lets, you know, anything get him down and just works so hard every single day, which is so cool to see, because all the players, everybody on the team always looked up to him and was always right there with him. He's a really inspiring guy who did so much to help his team out throughout his entire 2-year period with the Washington Huskies. And, you know, when it comes to the injuries, it's not something that I would be overly concerned about personally, where everything that, you know, came out around the NFL Combine was that he was cleared and that teams didn't really seem to be too concerned about his long-term health. And when it comes to the Falcons as a whole, it's a really great scenario, kind of like what he walked into at the University of Washington, where there's a really talented offensive line in front of him. There are a lot of really, really nice receivers around him and just pieces that, you know, he can utilize to the best of his advantage to help make sure that he's not taking a whole lot of hits. And he's somebody who I would be really, really excited about as a Falcons fan and just moving forward as a future part of the organization, even though, you know, he's a little bit on the older side as a prospect. He's somebody who I really think can be a long-term option at quarterback.
Okay, nice. That's great to hear. And I mean, of course, we are going to have this quarterback controversy for the next 2 years, whether we like it or not. Every time Kirk Cousins throws an interception, the camera will go right to Michael Penix on the bench. And on training camp, if Kirk Cousins throws 2 interceptions, everybody will start to asking to Michael Penix to start. How do you think he's going to handle that? And also, like, probably when he starts in 2 years from now, people are not going to expect him to make rookie mistakes. People are going to expect him to get things on a run already ongoing, like a pro, like a veteran. How do you think he's going to handle with both of these things?
So the moment was never too big for Michael Penix Jr. With Washington, we saw them make a run all the way to the national championship this last year. The moment was never too big for him. He's somebody who's always composed. He always just kind of knows what to do. And when it comes to just the way he's going to handle the situation, I know he's going to handle it with class, with grace, because that's just the kind of person that he is, where I don't think that any situation will be too big for him, too much for him, where the more I watch him, the more that I've just gotten a chance to get to know him over the years. he's somebody who always stays ready for the moment. If Kirk unfortunately has another injury, or maybe he's not ready to start the season with the Achilles injury that he has right now, where if some of those things happen, Mike is already going to be the guy who's ready to step in. He's really experienced, has so much college football under his belt. And on top of that, he's somebody where he already doesn't make a lot of mistakes at the college level, where every once in a while, there'll be a tip ball or something where interceptions do happen. Absolutely. Because that's just something that happens anyways. But one thing that I noticed with Michael Penix over his 2 years at Washington is a lot of the interceptions that he threw came from an overconfidence in his arm, which is not a bad thing to have. Absolutely. Where, a couple that I think back to were in 2022 against Oregon State and against Oregon as well, is he saw a throw that he was able to make. And then at a different point, he didn't read the defense in quite the same way. And it ended up being an interception, but he never made the same mistake twice. He would see these things, and then all of a sudden, you never saw that kind of throw from him again, where he'll still overthrow a ball every now and again. That's the one thing where I think he needs a little bit more time to refine at the pro level. Is it takes a little bit for him to dial in sometimes, where early on in the game where, you'll see Drake London streaking down the sidelines. Every once in a while, he might overthrow that ball early on in the game, but as it goes along, he'll find it and he's not going to miss that throw twice. That's the biggest thing. Is he just has so much experience and so much college football under his belt that he's not going to make the same mistakes over and over again, which is something I feel we've seen from Kirk Cousins in previous years.
Yeah. And of course, he's going to sit on the bench. Some people say that he needs a little bit of refinement on the technical aspects, his mechanics a little bit, his footwork, how he deals with pressure, his accuracy on the middle of the field throws. How do you see that? Do you think he actually needs this time on the bench? He actually needs to let's say evolve and upgrade in these areas of being a quarterback?
So I would say when it comes to throwing over the middle of the field, not so much. That was something that he just wasn't necessarily asked to do a whole lot at Washington, because when you have Rome Odunze, when you have Jalen Polk, when you have Jalen McMillan, that's not necessarily something that you're going to need to do a whole bunch. Where I feel that when he's asked to do it, he absolutely can. But so much of that came from the scheme that Washington and now Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb wanted to run, that it just wasn't necessarily what they asked him to do nearly as much. When you have a guy, especially in Rome Odunze, who can win so often in one-on-one coverage on the outside, that why are you going to look over the middle of the field where there's going to be more defenders over there when you don't necessarily need to make that throw? As for his mechanics, when we were watching him at his pro day a couple of months ago, that was something where we noticed a very significant change, where he wasn't, taking as long to just get into his windup to throw the ball, where there were little changes that were made. So I want to see if those translate over into, playing actual 11-on-11 football and not just, throwing on air as we do see it at pro days, at the combine, some of these workouts. But he's already making the necessary adjustments in that. And I have a feeling when, by the time training camp rolls around in June, July, August, we're going to see some notable improvements in those areas, and that he won't necessarily need that time on the bench, but just having that backup plan is still a very smart plan that Terry Fontenot decided to make.
Okay, and just to wrap up the Michael Penix discussion, of course we don't know yet what Zach Robinson is going to do on the offensive scheme. We assume it's something similar to the Sean McVay style of offense. If so, how do you see? Does that offense fits what Michael Penix is best? Does this elevates his game, or anyway? How do you see that?
Absolutely. I think so, especially some of the play action stuff that we've seen so often from Sean McVay, from Kyle Shanahan in some of those schemes. That's something that, he wasn't asked to do a whole ton of that at the college level, but it's something where, especially like I said, with the offensive line that's in front of him, he's somebody who is so smart that can really run any scheme effectively as long as he's just given time to integrate into it. So I don't have any questions about what kind of scheme he's going to fit best at. And especially, like I said, with the talent around him, that it's all going to work out really, really well for him at the NFL level, in my opinion.
Okay. Sounds good. And so moving on to Bralen Trice, our third round pick, our only edge rusher, indeed, let's say, in this draft that we got. We got him now with Ebiketie, D'Angelo Malone. I see him more as a power rush type of guy. He was listed at 275 in Washington. He came up at 245 on the combine, if I'm not wrong. Didn't test, correct, yeah. So let's say exceptionally, but at least on tape, he seems pretty good. What can you tell us? What can you tell us about him? And also, we saw, let's say, on the playoffs, he had a good game against Texas, not such a good game against Michigan. I would like to get some insights from you about, let's say, this playoff run and Bralen Trice overall.
Yeah. So let's start with his weight, because that's something where I didn't necessarily like that he weighed in at 245 at the combine, because as you said, he is more of a power guy where he doesn't just have one move that he uses every time, but he's so strong, especially when he's playing somewhere around 270 to 280, that really is his best skill set, where he can use that very well against the run as well. I have a feeling he slimmed down to test and then is going to bulk back up by the time fall camp rolls around, and he can play it. I'm going to call it 265, or I don't know if they're going to want him as heavy as he was at Washington, but he's so strong. He collapses the pocket so often that he's somebody who when I've asked UW's coaching staff about him, one comp that I got consistently was Raiders edge rusher Max Crosby. And a lot of that came in the sense of he's got such a high motor. He never wants to come off the field. He plays the run as well as he does the pass. And he's somebody who is committed, like I said, to just staying that out there on the field for every single snap if he possibly can. So that's where I see Bralen just kind of fitting in the outside of the defense, where he's somebody that you're not necessarily going to have to worry about over there. And then, like you said, he did have a really good game against Texas, 8 pressures, 2 sacks, and then didn't necessarily do so against Michigan. But it's not, I wouldn't say that necessarily falls on him specifically, where Washington's pass rush actually finished last in the Pac-12 in sacks this season. So, and a lot of that, just the pressure and everything came from him, where he's led the nation in quarterback pressures for the last 2 seasons. I believe the number is 146 total pressures, where he's somebody who's going to find a way to get after the quarterback consistently. And even though, it doesn't show up in the athletic testing numbers, he's somebody who's going to transcend those with his tape and just with some of the things he's able to do on the field, with his effort, with his strength, and just with his play style, that he's somebody who's, I think he's going to end up being a steal at 74 overall.
Okay. Yeah. And, let's say, do you see him as a 3-down already player in the NFL as a rookie? Do you think he's going to be, let's say, a designated pass rush in the beginning, or a guy that's going to be more used on a run to stop the run? How do you see this first year? How do you see the adaptation, and how can Morris, let's say, maximize the potential that Trice has?
So I think he already looks like a 3-down player, because we've seen him do it for the last 2 seasons, where he never wanted to come off the field anyways. And I don't think it's going to be any different at the NFL level, because like I said, when you look at what Max Crosby does for the Raiders, he never comes off the field. And I don't think it's going to be quite that extreme to where he's playing 98% of the snaps on the defensive side of the ball. But when I look at him, I see somebody who just loves to play the game, has such a high motor, has such good energy, that whenever he's on the field, you're going to see, oh yeah, he's doing really, really well setting the edge against the run. He can collapse the pocket from this side, especially on a run going to the other direction. Or, when the quarterback's dropping back to pass, he's somebody who's probably going to see a lot of one-on-one matchups. When you think about adding Grady Jarrett, or still having Grady Jarrett, having Ruka Rororo, and adding Brandon Dorless in the middle of the field, that he's somebody who is going to see a lot of one-on-one matchups with tackles. And that's where he thrives, where he can just probably utilize his bull rush more often than he does some other moves, as he continues to just kind of refine the rest of his pass rush bag. And the more that I look at him, the more I see is that he's going to be somebody who's going to be one of the we should have probably picked this guy higher. He looks like a top 50 pick in terms of his production, in terms of his PFF grade, some of those advanced metrics moving forward, where he's going to be on the field for all 3 downs.
Okay. Nice. That's great to hear. Falcons are going to need him for sure in his rookie season. But anyway, that's good to hear. Let's hope he's a 3-down guy from the start. And man, I think that's it. Thank you so much. Please let people know where they can find you on Twitter, on X, or on whatever social media you have it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on all forms of social media at rtomashoff34. That's R and then my last name, TOMASHOFF34. Yeah, I cover the Washington Huskies. Love to cover the NFL, especially since my New England Patriots picked up Jalen Polk, which just more of a Washington connection for me. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Talk about that all the time. Yeah. And like I said, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcast at Locked On Huskies. And then, check out uwhuskieswire.usatoday.com for all of our written work.
Thank you, Roman. Então, galera, é isso. Fechamos por hoje. Espero que vocês tenham gostado. O Roman entende muito da Universidade de Washington, um cara que vive isso praticamente todos os dias. E, bom, a gente volta em breve. Agradecer o Roman mais uma vez aí pela participação. E a gente se vê em breve. Um abraço e até mais.